Hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe. Welcome to Rosenfield 10. This is my channel covering the Saints. I'm a Saints fan. I am not a reporter. I don't have all of the access. I don't have the resources. I'm just a regular fan. And the reason why I wanted to focus on the Saints with my channel is because it's always been a big passion of mine. And I watch lots of Saints content providers, and sometimes they don't do things that I would like them to do. So that's why I started my channel. I don't get hardly any views, but these channels I watch get plenty of views, and I'm inundated with their opinions all of the time. And I have opinions of my own. I wish that I could get into discussions with these people and we can come to an understanding on certain things. I would also like to suggest that they do different things on a medium like YouTube. So, for instance, a lot of them will talk about stats, but they don't bring up the stats and show you. They don't keep them up while they're discussing the stats. I like to have that visual aid of looking at the stats instead of trying to remember what you said. Like right now on Locked On Saints, Ross is doing every Monday he does a mock draft. And he'll bring up a picture of the player that he drafted for us with a couple of stats. Then he'll pull it down. And then I have to remember who we picked because he doesn't give me a reminder. When I do a mock draft, I keep the list of the players we've already picked. So you don't have to try to remember everything. And you can see and how the progression goes and everything else. It's little things like that that bother me when I'm watching Saints content. It's stuff that I wish that they would do that they don't do. They breezed through all of the stats this past year for the Saints. No one ever pulls it up, looks at it, talks about it, discusses it. You know, I like the coverage, and I'm getting my news from these guys. A channel like New Orleans Football, who just now started to do little visual aids and prompts and pulling up stats and stuff. They just started doing that. And a lot of times, they're okay. So getting with the times. Some of these people, I feel like a lot of them think it's a podcast and they don't have to show you anything. And just show me something, please. So anyway, that's why I'm covering the Saints. It's a passion of mine. I like making the little prompts and stuff. So it's fun for me as a creative. And then I get to talk about my team. Okay, so what makes me different than everybody else is when I have an opinion, I will state it, and I welcome the opposite opinion. People like, and I don't want to call anybody out and make them sound bad because I listen to all of them. So, and I'm subscribed to all of them. So when I talk about these Saints providers, I'm watching every video anyway. So I'm not saying don't watch them. I'm saying little things here and there that drive me crazy. Like Jeff Nowak, whenever he does Black and Gold, Inside Black and Gold, the podcast with Steve Geller, most of the time. And Jeff focuses on Twitter X so much that he'll do whole 15-minute rants about what he saw on Twitter. And it's one thing to say, hey, look, this is what the Saints fans are saying. This is my opinion. But it's almost like he's making fun of them. And I think that's a bad look when you're covering the team and you're basically crapping on the fans. You can say that certain fans are saying certain things and you don't feel that way. You feel this way. Or maybe you think they're ignorant and uninformed, but you don't have to call them that or treat them that way, except to try to educate them. And I think the best way to come to an understanding and for a person to influence me positively would be to treat the whole situation positive. So yeah, I have complaints about the takes that certain fans have, but I want to sit down and have a discussion about it. So at least when we walk away from the table, we understand where each other's coming from. I yearn for the understanding, and that way I can accept and move on whenever something happens that I might not agree with later on. At least I'll have some education on the matter. And then Nick Underhill at New Orleans Football, he doesn't focus on X so much. He'll bring it up every now and then, but he constantly says that they're smarter than everybody else because they have the resources, and most people, other people that are talking about the Saints are just They just don't know. He said that so many times in the last couple of videos. It's like, are you crapping on the fans too? Because we all have a point. And he has these points, these opinions, and he says them. And I'm hoping he doesn't think we're supposed to take it at gospel, because I don't. So I love these content providers. Gave you a little bit of a why I'm doing my own coverage of the Saints. As a Saints fan, without all of the resources, I'll try to give you something else that the others don't give you. And then at the same time, if I have an opinion, we can talk about it. And I beg you guys to leave your comment so we can have a discussion about it. Let me know if I'm getting it wrong, how you think I'm getting it wrong, and hopefully wherever I come from, you can enlighten you as well. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm not trying to get you to look at it the way I look at it and forget about what you feel. I'm just trying to reach an understanding. So with all that in mind, it's time for me to go on an epic rant. And when I go on a rant, this is just so that I can get my opinion and point of view across. And I will not shun your opinion. I would just like explanation, understanding. So today's epic rant is going to be about the edge rusher. Oh, I hate that term. Edge rusher. What does that mean? You're an edge rusher. That means you can't play to run. That's what it means to me. Edge rusher means you're good at getting after the quarterback. Okay, what position do you play? Do you play linebacker, or do you play defensive end, or do you play defensive tackle? What is it? I need to know this for me, in my mind, for my mind to wrap my head around getting behind the edge rusher. What position does he play? Tell me that. Oh, is he like Zach Bond? We're going to put him at linebacker on early downs, even though he's a defensive end and he can't move or cover. And then we'll put him on the line on third down, but, not for his whole career with the Saints, just in the last couple of games last season, because we finally took Cam Jordan off the field. So that's my first question. What position does he play? Right now, Nick Underhill's telling everybody his favorite players, Dallas Turner, the Saints have to change their stereotype. They have to. You know why they have to? Because colleges are doing it. Every defensive end in college is light now, and that's all you're going to get in the draft. So you have to draft that way. Okay, I get it. If that's all you got to choose from, and the league turns into that, then, you got to get with the times. But I don't see these light linebacker-esque edge rushers playing on the defensive line in early downs when another team's running the ball for 200 yards against you. So that's my issue with edge rusher. I want a guy that plays defensive end that's big enough to stop the run. I want my pass rusher to be anybody, as long as they're playing in a position that they can handle, right? Zach Bowen, I'm not sure if he's a linebacker or not. We know pretty good in the last couple of games this past season, if you put him at defensive end on pass rushing situations, he can get after the quarterback and cause a lot of pressure. So there's a spot for Bowen. He's an edge rushing defensive end who comes in on third down. In the meantime, you're trying to get him to play linebacker, and, it just worked out okay. I think Bowen's been a nice player for the Saints because he's been so good on special teams. He blocked a punt last year. He got an interception at linebacker last year. Of course, he fumbled it while he was returning it. And then he got his first sacks ever by finally playing on the defensive end, the position that he should have been the whole time, but never big enough to hold up all three downs on the defensive line. So this is my issue with the edge rusher. I don't like the term edge rusher. When you say you're an edge rusher, that tells me you can't stop the run, because they're defining you as an edge rusher, someone who's going to rush the passer. And that could be a linebacker, that could be a safety, that could be a cornerback, that could be defensive line, all across the board. So I would prefer the term defensive end or linebacker. Now, Nick Underhill's favorite player right now is Dallas Turner. Well, he's 20. I think he's about to turn 21, or he just turned 21. So he's young. And he's about 245, 250 pounds right now. So there is a chance that with a couple of more years of development, physical development, that he can get a lot bigger, and then he can hold up on the defensive line. But there's no way a 250-pound guy is going to hold up on the defensive line on early downs when a team's running the ball. That's how I feel. I feel that way. So if Turner develops in a couple of years into a 260, 65-pound guy, then yeah, he's got a better chance of holding up on the defensive line. But the way I look at Turner right now is he's a linebacker. He may grow. I don't know. He's so young, but he's a good pass rusher. He plays the run fine. He's decent in coverage for a guy that, one of those tweeners. In my opinion, the Saints don't really know what to do with these tweeners. Do you play him at linebacker? Do you play him at defensive end? Sometimes by the time the Saints figure it out, it's too late. They had Caden Ellis for years. And then in 2022, Pete Werner got hurt, and Ellis had progressed to the point where they took a chance on him at will. And Ellis played about half the season at will, and he ended up with 7.5 sacks. It was great. Why didn't we get 7.5 sacks from Pete Werner at the will? Well, Pete Werner's not as good at rushing the passer. Okay, but Pete Werner was out on the field almost every play. He and Demario Davis are your two top linebackers, and they're out there almost all the time, unless it's like some sort of dime package. So Werner was at the will, and he wasn't getting sacked, so he was being used to the best of his ability, I'm assuming, which is coverage. And then once you switched to Ellis at will, you decided to blitz that player more because he was better at rushing the passer, which meant you had to compensate for the coverage. And so in that instance, I'm assuming another linebacker that can cover, or players coming down in the box, nickelbacks or safeties or something like that. Somebody had to take the coverage that Werner wasn't doing, and now you're blitzing from the linebacker position because you're utilizing Ellis to the best of his abilities. And yeah, that's good. I like that. That's nice. You had the same position, will linebacker, two different players, and you utilize both of them to the strengths, but you ultimately utilize that position totally different. Now, what I would like Nick Underhill to do, since he has access to all of this information, is to let me know what percentage of Pete Werner's plays were blitzes and pass rushes. Which percentage of every play that Werner had was a pass rush, and then what percentage of every play Ellis played at linebacker, at will linebacker? What percentage of that was a pass rush? And I'm assuming that they rushed Ellis more, because if they rushed Werner at the same rate, he wasn't getting to the quarterback at all. Ellis managed 7.5 sacks. So obviously they either did it more with Ellis, or Ellis was just way more successful. But I look at Dennis Allen as a defensive coach, and I think, hopefully he utilizes players the best of their ability, and he's got a defense that's functional enough that can do all of it. And he, as a coach, in turn, can see where his players are best at and then put them in the position. So, and he's shown he can do this. He's evolved. The evolution that Nick Underhill is demanding is that we evolve from a big edge rusher to a small edge rusher, because that's just the way it is. And I don't buy into that. I buy into there's a lot more smaller edge rushers coming out, but I don't buy into you have to grab one, because our biggest problem on defense last year was stopping the run. We were at the bottom of the league when it came to sacks. And when you're talking about defense, you're either talking about run defense or pass defense. So we have a lack of sacks last year. And Underhill and lots of other people are saying it's a necessity. We have to have a pass rusher. Well, okay. 2 years ago, we had 48 sacks. And then last year, we only had 34. So we were among the league best with 48. And now we're among the league worst with 34. So where did the difference go? About 14 sacks. Where did it go? Caden Ellis had 7 of them. And your own man, Cameron Jordan, who had 8 2 years ago, only had 3 last year. So there you go. That's 13 of the 14 right there that you're missing. The player that got 7, you let go. The player that's playing that position now that could be utilized the same way isn't good enough to do that, or you just don't do it with them. And so you're missing your sacks there, and you're missing your sacks from a decline in ability from Cameron Jordan. Just like this front office, to sign somebody to a 2-year extension right before they start coming apart. The man never missed a play, and all of a sudden he's hurt. He can't rush the passer anymore. And obviously he's not as good against the run anymore because nobody was good against the run last year. So, yeah, you've got a need for a pass rusher because you don't have one for sure. But we were in the top 10 in defense this past year, and we were in the top 10 in defense 2 years ago. So you lose production in pass rush, but you maintain your pass defense status. It's because your secondary is good, and that can work 2 ways. Your secondary is really good, it makes your defensive line better, or your defensive line's really good, makes your secondary better. And what it sounds to me like is though people demanding a smaller edge rusher are saying to me is that if we can get 48 sacks instead of 34 sacks, that we're going to be a better team overall. We will. But that's going to take us over the hump. I don't know. I think our defense was comparable. I think the lack of sacks this year was kind of balanced out by the increase in turnovers that we had, that we forced with that great secondary of ours. So can't always count on turnovers. So perhaps with a lack of pass rush and a lack of turnovers, our pass defense is way worse this year. That's possible. I'm also considering increased sacks. Okay, so I looked at the teams that led the league in sacks this year, and almost all of them were in the playoffs. There's a couple of them that weren't. And then I looked at the best pass defenses from this past year, and most of the teams that led in sacks were at the top of the board in pass defense, with a few exceptions. The Saints were one of them. We were in the top 10 in pass defense, top 10 in points allowed, top 10 in yards allowed, but we were at the bottom of the barrel in sacks. And I think that, like I said, the turnovers made a big difference in that. But come on. Let's talk about this team and how we're going to make this team better, ultimately better. What is our biggest problem? I can concede that we need defensive linemen, for sure. And I can also concede that we could use a pass rusher, yes. But I can't concede that pass rusher is the most important thing this team needs. I can't do it. I just can't do it. We managed all those sacks 2 years ago. We didn't change anything except we didn't blitz the linebacker. That's what we changed. We didn't blitz Werner. We blitzed Davis, and Davis got 7 sacks last year, 7 sacks this year. So, so I'm thinking, how do you generate pass rush? I'm thinking Dennis Allen is smart enough that he can figure it out. You find the perfect guys to blitz, try not to give tells. Be nice to have well-rounded guys. It would be nice if Dallas Turner was a linebacker who could cover and take Pete Werner's place at will and rush the passer from the edge and be Caden Ellis and Pete Werner wrapped into one. That's what we want from Dallas Turner, and that could happen. And if that does happen, it's going to make our team better. It's going to make our defense better. But I don't think it's the most important thing we need. I know it's not the most important thing we need because we were top 10 in pass defense, even though we didn't have a pass rusher. And we've seen the sacks come from different places. So I think Dennis Allen's smart enough. The problem is Cameron Jordan is deteriorating at a level right before our eyes. Every single second he steps on the field, he's getting worse and worse. So he's only good now at defensive end and early downs to stop the run. That's all he's good at. You need somebody to come in and rush the passer on third down. I don't know if that's going to be your first round draft pick, especially a smaller defensive end who won't be able to bulk up and play on the defensive line. I think what's more important for the Saints is to get a defensive end, not necessarily a pass rusher, a defensive end who can stop the run, who's going to take Cam Jordan's place permanently. And you hope that player who's big enough to play the run, we can generate a pass rush with him. That's what you hope. But I think the most important part of a defensive end for this team right now is someone who can stop the run. Someone who can take Cam Jordan's place in 2 years or 1 year, who can play the run, and hopefully he's good enough to be a good enough player to generate a pass rush. I think that's the most important thing you need from your edge. Like I say, there's that term again. Defensive end. I want a defensive end who's going to take Cam's place. That means he's got to be big to stop the run. And if he's good enough to rush the passer, you won't have to take him out on third downs. You get yourself a nice little pass rusher like Zach Bond, who comes in on third down and rushes the passer. That's if you got a guy at defensive end who can't rush the passer. And that's what you have now in Cam Jordan. So, but if you're going to say that defensive end is the most important, and it's important, it's not the most important position. And certainly edge rusher is not the most important position. I think you need defensive end who can stop the run first, a defensive tackle who can stop the run first, and then you start to think about how do you generate more pressure. Because if our pass defense is going to be this good and we're going to be in the top 10, then yeah, you can always get better, but I don't think that's where you start. What was worse for this team, the offense or the defense? What needs fixing more, the offense or the defense? And I would tell you that the two biggest problems this team had was rushing the ball, which is a reflection of the offensive line and the scheme, and stopping the run, which is a reflection of the defensive line and the scheme. That's the most important thing. Running the ball, stopping the run. The next important thing to me before creating a pass rush, especially with the defensive line, it's on my agenda. But the next important thing is pass protection. Pass protection with your offensive line. Because you want your offense to be better. And I can see a lot of good in Juwan Johnson at tight end, Alvin Kamara at running back, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed at wide receiver. I can see a lot of good in the offense if Derek Carr plays like he did for the last couple of games. I can see a lot of good in everywhere across the team with the exception of the offensive line. So, offensive line, to me, without a doubt, is the number one need for this team. I don't know if you get a lot better, if you get better really quick, addressing that in the draft. I don't know if that's necessarily what you have to do with your first or second round pick, but I think it's way more important than an edge rusher. Defense, you can argue, and I will concede, defensive end is a very important position that we need to address. But the type of defensive end we need is a guy that's going to stop the run, and then we can try to generate a pass rush somewhere else. Because like I said, secondary can make your defensive line better. Your defensive line can make your secondary better. Right now, our secondary is good. It's going to make our defensive line better. They weren't very good this past year, so we need to upgrade. But I think that Stopping the run was the problem for this team. How many games last year did the Saints allow 300 yards passing? Over 300 yards passing. I'm not sure. I should have looked into it. But I know for a fact that we allowed 200 rushing yards in like 3 straight games. And we allowed 150 rushing yards, 130 something rushing yards, just about every game we played. We were at the bottom of the barrel. We were letting teams get over 100 yards. And that was the reason why we lost a lot of this game. The only game we lost last year because of the pass defense was against the Rams. And we didn't have we didn't have Lattimore. We didn't have, the Rams were running the ball on us like crazy. They had over 150 rushing yards when it was all said and done. And of course, that opens up your passing game a whole hell of a lot too. So I look at the Rams game, the loss, you look at the stats, you see, oh, they passed for a lot of yards. They ran for a lot of yards too. Other than that, how many games? I mean, the Vikings had success with the tight end passing the ball. But ultimately, it was the quarterback in the running game, the quarterback running the ball, and us falling behind so far. Then you had a game with the Bears that we won, but the tight end, went crazy on us. And so, the biggest problems we had on defense all year long was stopping the run and covering the tight end. And I think that comes before rushing the passer. So it's just my opinion. Just the way that I look at it. I feel like in 2 years, Cameron Jordan's going to be gone, and Dallas Turner is not the kind of guy that's going to start at defensive end and stop the run. That's the way I feel. Leatu Latu, same thing. I think he's going to get blown off the ball on running plays more often and he grades out good against the run. If you look at just the grades, it seems like Latu's pretty good. And then I watch the film and I'm like, well, yeah, every now and then he uses his little moves. He can get off the run block and then quickly get to the runner. That happens a few times. But a lot of the times he's sitting there doing this and it doesn't matter because the 300-something pound guys got him already and it's too late. And he's pushing the guy that weighs 50, 60 pounds less than him all over the field. So I gotta say, defensive end, yes. Addressing it more than once, yes. I agree with all of that. But you gotta stop the run. You can generate a pass rush somewhere else. I'm not a fan of drafting a light edge rusher with the first pick we have in the draft. Even though I would love a piece like that and it would be exciting and it's something this team doesn't have, I think we have bigger fish to fry. Now, I've been talking about this for almost a half hour, and I really wanted to get into breaking down the importance of the positions of need for this team. And those things can be addressed through free agency and the draft. And I've done it before on plenty of other videos. I'm going to save that topic for the next video, and we're going to focus on that video on how important every position is. So for this video, this is my epic rant about edge rusher. No. Defensive end or a linebacker. Please make it easy for me. Instead of telling me we need an edge rusher, we need a pass rusher worse than anything. We need 2 of them, as a matter of fact. Why? Why? We were in the top 10 in pass defense last year. Why do we need that when you can generate that with players if you just utilize them better? If Pete Werner's not a guy that can rush the passer, well, then go get a linebacker that can rush the passer, but he's not going to be able to cover. You get a linebacker that can cover and rush the passer, greatest linebacker in the draft, probably Dallas Turner. If he can do it, draft him. But I need Nick Underhill to tell me that that's the position he's going to play. What position is he going to play? Convince me that Dallas Turner is the best pick with our 14th overall pick. Convince me. And the only way you can do that is by telling me what position he's going to play. Where is he at on first down? Where is he at on second down? Where is he at on third down? What is he asked to do? He's just going to come in on the defensive end on third down and pin his ears back and go after the quarterback and get to him. Okay, But what are you going to do with him at first down, second down? You know, that's what I want to know. I'm coming along to Jared Verse. He plays with so much power at 260, 65 pounds. I think he can add 5 or 10 more pounds, and then he's good on the line. I think if you're 275, you can hold up against a run on early downs. Jared Verse is in the conversation now for me, and that's because I had plenty of Saints fans who spoke to me about it and gave me their points of view, and it made a lot of sense. I didn't ignore them. I didn't shun them. I accepted the conversation and walked away with an understanding, believe it or not. So that's what I want. I just want an understanding. Nick Underhill, if an edge rusher is what this team needs sorely most of all, is it because we didn't have a good enough pass defense last year? Or is it just because we didn't have a good enough number at sacks? It's because we couldn't get to the quarterback. I got you. But improving the defense in that way, you're still going to have an offense that's going out there and not doing enough, averaging 20 points a game until the end of the season when we averaged 28, 30 points a game. And it all kind of balanced out. So, yeah, better play calling is going to make the offensive line better. And hopefully Clint Kubiak does that. You know he's going to get some player-specific, detail-specific players for this new scheme. So, you know there's going to be some turnover. And subscribe to Rosenfield 10, because on the next video, I'm going to be breaking the draft down even more. I'm Joe. Please leave your comments. Let me know where these edge rushers are going to play. Let me know, how do we stop the run? How do we run the ball? How do we protect the passer? And then how do we generate a pass rush? And I am willing to listen. I am never going to shut Saints fans off like it seems a lot of these sites will. I'm going to be your friend. You are part of the Who Dat Nation. I am your Who Dat family member. And we're going to sit down and we're going to have a nice meal. And we're going to have some coffee. And we're going to talk about the Saints. And we're going to understand where each other's coming from. So I'm begging you, Nick Underhill, please tell me what position Dallas Turner's going to play. And until the next video, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?